Get the show on the road. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
President Gardner.
Here.
Vice President Stover.
Present.
Mr. Scholar.
Here.
Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Lisanti.
Here.
Solicitor Levada.
Here.
Manager Patterson.
Welcome to those of you who are here and to those who may be watching on the internet. I appreciate your interest in our activities. Let's see, the first item is the approval of minutes. See, we have to take a motion of this tonight so that it's available. So I need a motion to approve the minutes of September 15th.
Move.
I second.
Oh, any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Discussion of the 2015-2018 police contract. Gwen?
The police contract we had a 5-year contract this past time, and it will be over on June 30th, 2015. But Ohio Township prepares it at this season so that since our contract crosses budget seasons, so that we can have the numbers to work on next year. So what this is a 3-year renewal of the contract that we have. All the terms are the same, and it is a 3% increase each year in costs, and that's the same increase that we had on our last contract. So it's just it's right in with the contract. It would just reads just like a 3-year continuation, everything the same. And they do offer a 5% discount if we pay in full by the beginning of the contract, and we always do, so we get that 5% discount. So, it's about $5,000 a year discount.
Pay in full, annual.
Annually, we make one payment annually.
Any other questions on that?
Just wondered, has anybody brought up any services that we don't have that we need, or any shortcomings in the services we do have?
I have not heard anything other than the standard speeding complaints in certain locations that they address when brought up. No, I've not heard any complaints about the service.
Now, they have not given you new proposal?
They have. Yeah, you have it. You have it. And it's basically monetarily a continuation of what we already have.
Okay.
Okay, we'll vote on that.
I think people have been very pleased.
No, I haven't heard.
For the price.
Okay, we'll vote on that next time. Next item, discussion of sale of crack sealer. This is good
I read
news.
that and I thought, crack deal.
I thought that was right. It's to repair asphalt.
I wish we could help them, but we can't.
This was talked about last month, I believe, and Tony made the suggestion to put it on Municipid, and that was a great suggestion because it sold this morning for $9,200.51.
Wow.
So
What was the estimate?
2,500.
We were
Yeah.
looking for 2,500. So yeah, that
And you
was
got how much?
9,200. So yes, it was I've already spoken to the buyer. He's out in the Philadelphia area, so we're going to be talking this week about how he wants to come out and pick it up, and that's his deal. And he'll bring a certified check when he comes.
That's
So
the way they usually do it.
Yep. As long as he shows up and everything,
That's
so I would
right.
call it a success.
Do we need to take any action?
You will. Next week, you have to adopt a resolution because of that you're selling property. So, and I will have that ready for next week, but it's basically just going to plug in the name of the buyer and the cost.
What was the second highest bid?
Well, it was like an eBay auction.
It's an auction.
So it just,
What was
I mean,
Or were there other bidders close to that?
yes, there was a race at the end. There were
Good.
several bids right at the very
Good.
end. But yeah, it started out at $600 and ended up at $9,200
Where do you phone in the bid?
online.
Okay.
So all I had to do was
It's
wait
a
for an
great
email to
deal,
tell me
guys.
it was
That's
over.
what you have to do.
That's cool.
What
Yeah.
was the site? Is it
It's a Municipid.
okay.
It's a municipal auction site.
Right.
Is
And
that,
you estimated the value?
We said we price on it.
Yeah, we wanted to get at least what we paid for it.
That's
4 years
all
ago.
we
And
paid
you
for it.
paid
I
2,500?
paid $2,500.
Used it for a couple of years and made 7,000.
Is that legal?
Wow.
There you go. Why not?
It's like a diamond to the brain,
We gotta buy more.
right?
No, but that's a good way to do it.
That doesn't make any sense.
What doesn't make sense?
It's a depreciating asset. How did it, how,
How could, yeah.
One, I think we bought it right.
Yeah,
We bought it right.
Two-year
We
in
bought it
Philadelphia.
the price is right.
why wouldn't they just go to the dealer and buy a new car?
Because.
No. We bought it very old.
on.
Oh, we bought it all.
Yes.
And
Oh,
you-
it
it's
I
used
see.
now, yeah.
Okay.
So
I
it's very
got you.
annoying to feel yourself sink.
We did that with our pickup trucks too, at the authority.
Hmm.
Just a few grand more.
Okay. The next discussion of investment strategy. Whose strategy?
Do the same thing with this.
What is?
This,
Well, you know that Gwen went out and got suggestions from a variety of financial folk as to how to properly invest that unrestricted money that we have laying around. And Pliggett was the one that came back with the most professional and probably the best plan. But Gwen and I have discussed the budget for next year and to some extent longer term. And the last that we talked, I think we have to wait until we have a firm grip on public works expenditures, primarily for roads, before we go back to Pliggett to finalize, because until we determine the roads, we don't know how much money we have to invest. But it's all underway.
Point of interest. Are we accepting the ladder concept?
I believe so.
Okay. Then if you're accepting the ladder concept, you can invest based on the ladder concept,
Yes,
okay? So
Yeah.
if you need 100 grand, you make that a 30-day
Yes.
investment and you make it more longer.
so by the time we get the budget for 2015, we'll know exactly what we have for them to invest.
Just so we're.
Yep.
Just so we're laddering.
Okay. Discussion of Weber's Corners plan, lot subdivision plan by Earl and Judith Seiler.
This is Mr. Seiler, who's been at a lot of our meetings lately. We've gotten to know him very well for all the different approvals that he's needed to receive for his subdivision and to build a house. He was at our meeting last month where he received his conditional use approval. Then he went to the zoning hearing board and received 2 of the 3 variances that he was seeking, but the 2 that he received were enough for him to build his house. This is the last step, is to approve the subdivision, which cuts his large parcel into 2, because he's not allowed to have a parcel larger than 1 acre for a house in this zoning district. So we're waiting for the county comments, and they said they hope to have them for us by the end of the week. So next week you can finally vote on the subdivision approval and he can finally get started.
Okay,
So it's a county thing.
We're just waiting for their review letter.
And so this is the reason he can't have a lot that's any bigger is because it's in the Weber corner.
Correct,
And that had been originally planned because they wanted to try to develop that commercially.
correct.
But he's gonna put residential in there. So basically, we're scrapping the commercial plan.
Well, no, he's carving off 1 parcel for his house and the rest of it is still the commercial.
he's sort of at one end of it.
Yes, he's at the upper end, which abuts residential lots.
Have we had any interest in commercial development there?
None that I know of.
None, right? That's been out there for 2 years?
2 years.
Oh, more than that. Yeah. Actually, the part right at the corner of Glen Mitchell and Weber is a canyon. So
Yeah, right.
I don't see
Right.
anybody.
You'd need a ton of fill to make anything happen.
Okay. Discussion of purchase of a backhoe. Tom's not here, but
Tom's not here. Same concept that he's talked about before. He feels that the backhoe that we currently have is several parts are shimmying in different locations. There's a lot of rust. There's a lot of things that he feels would be expensive to repair. And his concern, rather than having it be something that we plan for distance in the future, is to have the backhoe available for salt and winter emergency situations. So he doesn't feel that it's something that can just be talked about for a long time. So he has requested to the board that the board try to find the funding for a backhoe. And in doing the budget, it doesn't look like we will be putting it in the budget itself for 2015. So any funding for it would come from the, just the general fund balance.
What is the price on it?
The price right now, he got several bids and he does use state pricing for all of his, purchases. And the selling price is $93,000 and they would give us an $18,000 trade-in value on the old one. So the final purchase would be around $75,000 for the back.
You said something about a late purchase plan? Is this?
Yeah, so that it doesn't have to go out for a general bid by the engineer. When you go to, if you go to certain dealers that have already have state approved pricing, that counts as
Okay.
the bidding process.
Okay.
And this is a used backhoe.
He'll be buying new.
You're buying new.
And we have, every year in the budget, we put away $20,000 toward the truck fund because we have a truck replacement cycle. And the pickup truck is due in this coming 2015 would be replaced at the end of that. He feels that that is in good shape and can last a while longer. So some of the residuals that we'd set aside for the truck fund could be used towards the backhoe. And then he would just build up the truck fund for another 2 years until it would be time to replace that, so.
Mhm.
I certainly think you're gonna need it, particularly with winter coming.
Mhm. Well, it sounds like it's, the one, existing one has some real problem.
Yeah, can't.
I mean, is there any good to buying new or used instead of new?
Could be,
Talk to the guy in Philadelphia.
yeah,
Yeah, right.
it could be, but I don't know if there's anything on the auction. You could go on to the auction site and see if anybody's trying to sell one.
Just like new?
Well, I mean, it's
Yeah.
worth,
Yeah.
it's worth a shot. I don't know the answer. You can go on the site and find out.
Sounds like a good idea.
Well, I think it's like anything else. If you buy it used and you buy it unseen, you have no idea what you're buying.
Well,
Like
sure. I
buying
think
a
that for a $75,000 piece of equipment, you get it looked at by a mechanic.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
Well,
It's like,
I think that's worth checking into.
I think so too.
that sounds a lot of money.
Worth a shot.
Okay.
Okay. Discussion of 2015 budget.
I've started the process for the 2015 budget and I've worked with George as finance chair to go over the very first rough draft. I will have the first official draft to the board for the meeting next week. Not a lot has changed. A lot of our expenses are fairly standard, trash collection, police, roads, personnel. It's standard expenses every year. We did put in the $100,000 to pay this weekly tap-in fee, and we are allocating some money towards roads. It's still waiting to be seen how much we would suggest transferring into to set aside for roads for next year. But those are the main things that we were playing with that were different. So next week you'll have the draft of the budget and a memo just basically explaining some of the key points.
Okay.
I think just an overview, what Gwen and I have talked about, there appears to be a likelihood of $75,000 to $100,000 surplus in 214, correct? Might be a little bit more. After we get rid of the $100,000 payments to Swiftly, we could project out in 216, 217, maybe a $250,000 surplus. We've also been socked with unusual legal expenses this year and last. So the idea is to allocate that $200,000 projected surplus each year predominantly to roads, but also back into the capital fund for the pickup truck, which will have device. Other than that, there's really not a lot of fudge room. Most of the other expenses are fixed or from restricted funds. So that's what we're working on.
And there's no proposed millage increase in this year's budget. We're trying to work with the same millage that we have set for this, for 2000.
Yeah, and if you recall, that knocked probably 73,000 out. But keep our fingers crossed that employment stays high in Aleppo Township, because the earned income tax has increased dramatically.
You know, we should talk about that.
Yeah, we need to
Yep.
rent or sell some more space down on the industrial park. Hear of any activity
I
down there?
don't, but the pavers are supposed to come in and start next week on the 20th to get that road paved. So I think that'll go a long way towards making it more marketable.
Mhm. Good. Anything else on that part of it?
Well, we're gonna pay this tap fee, but they're still juggling the other tap fee.
Yeah, the double tap fee that people would have to pay?
Yeah.
Where does that stand?
We've got recommendations on what to do. We're still evaluating, the authority's still evaluating. I'm sure we're gonna be in a fight with Wickley because we're telling them they're double dipping. We already paid it when we paid this 100 grand.
Mhm.
And that allowed us so many EDUs, so many flows, if you want to talk about it in a different way. We're far below the flow.
Okay,
So our position is,
sounds like a good argument.
we think it's good. Whether it's good or not. Go ahead.
But what Tony and we have talked about, I'm not certain we really have the authority to challenge that because it's not being charged by our authority or our township to the homeowner. It's being charged by Sewickley Direct.
Well,
So how do we say, don't pay it?
I disagree.
No, I'm just
Okay.
saying, I'm not sure where we stand.
Well, because the homeowner doesn't contract with Sewickley, do they?
For the tap fee, correct, Gwen?
There's no, it's, there's about it in our
No, it's
contract.
not. That's right.
But the homeowners have, Sewickley hasn't told us that the homeowners pay here and then they go down
I see.
and pay to tap into their
We're the agent.
eventual system.
Again, it's an
Okay, good.
authority which goes across township line.
I mean, wouldn't we have status as a third-party beneficiary if nothing else?
Yeah. I think we've got to discuss that because I think we got to raise the issue at the appropriate time.
Oh, no question. And we're still waiting for a response on the request for the 100,000+ that we overpaid. Correct, Gwen? We have no.
I haven't heard anything. I did talk to Kevin once and he said that he would be bringing it to his board and I know that they meet sometime this week.
Good.
So hopefully we will have something soon.
Well, I agree with George. We handle one thing at a time. We got this 100 grand sitting on the table negotiating. And then
Now, didn't they pay something partially?
they,
No, nothing.
they offered,
Offered half.
Oh,
they offered half,
okay, that was it, they offered,
but we rejected that.
okay.
Okay. Next, I guess, George, that's your suggestion?
Yeah, I had one resident and one former commissioner offered to help with the budget, which I think was a good idea. And Gwen and I believe that it would be best for the board to approve the establishment of a citizens budget committee. It's Greg Shipley, Sally's husband, and Clay Stoop.
You know, I think they're both great people. But why do we need to go outside? I mean, you've already said the budget's not very complicated. And I think it's the responsibility of the 5 elected people to do the budget. And we have more knowledge of it than people, generally from people from the outside. And why couldn't we have an internal committee, and at least probably 2 people from the board to work on the budget?
Well, I think Clay has at least as much experience as any of us, certainly more than me with this. And Greg Shipley asked to be. I don't have any problem with citizen involvement in a budget. It's their money.
So
Yeah.
what would their role be?
Probably very moderate.
So
Take a look,
if you
just-
have like by next week, you say, you'll have a draft of the budget. And they look at this and they don't particularly like a number, and they feel like this number shouldn't be here, but here. Is that something that they're gonna have a say in?
Well, we have,
Well, they're not-
we
yeah,
have
they're-
final decision.
All they would do is, as any committee, they would just make recommendations to this board.
Oh, that's my question.
No, they don't have a vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I promised Gwen that if there are any difficulties, I'll shoulder them. I'm not gonna pass them on to her.
Uh,
I don't know, I mean, I
I
think
just-
sometimes that's opening up a can
Yeah,
of
it's
worms.
growing something that I don't think needs to be grown, actually.
Well, what's your concern?
I think the more people you have involved in that process, sort of a natural trend that they'll find ways to spend more money. And it's easier for them to recommend anything.
Well, the only objection I would have is you've selected two people and we've got different constituents. And why are they from that area, not this area?
Yeah.
And we're gonna get into that dog fight again. I don't know. I mean, you all of a sudden open it up for, well, these are advising on a budget, why can't we advise you on a budget?
Well, they can. I mean,
I know, but it's no longer two, then it becomes 10.
You know, in Swickley Heights Manor, we've always had a finance committee that helps, and they do a very good job. And I don't sense in either case that there's any,
I just don't see the need either.
What'd you say, Rod?
I don't see the need to expand this into a committee.
And your concern is that it's going to be viewed as, again, and I'm just reframing what you said. It might be
Yeah.
viewed as just people from Sewickley Heights Manor. Or, okay.
well,
What's your view?
I think my initial inclination is to see it more George's way, that I don't know that there's a problem with having non-commissioners involved in a board that only makes recommendations back to the Board of Commissioners. I'm sorry, not a board, a committee that only makes recommendations back to the board. And I think that's very common in governing bodies and committees. I mean, SPC does that all the time, that they have committees that are subcommittees of session and they come back and make recommendations to session, and including finance. But I guess recognizing that we're not going to vote this week, I'd be interested to hear what the community thinks as well. And if people want to weigh in on that, whether they think that's a good idea or whether they would expect us as elected officials to be doing that all by ourselves, I'd be interested to hear what the voters think. And if there's a concern that one of the sort of three are going to be unrepresented, I'd be interested in hearing if that is a concern or if that's an imagined concern, if people really feel that way.
I've not heard it expressed this. It's just.
Well, it's the first time it's come up, so.
It's off the top of my head.
All right, well, we aired the subject.
Yep. And I guess I would encourage people who are watching at home, if anybody's watching at home, know sometime before next week so that we can make an informed vote.
Okay. Discussion of loan request for Leopard Township Authority.
Okay, hat in hand. As you know, our status on this landslide is, it's really hit the authority quite hard. We're at about 30 grand. We're probably going to be about 50 grand here before we're done.
Right.
Yeah, some bills. So we're faced with that. Now we're going out and we're getting $100,000, which is going to help us there. It's going to allow us to pay off for all the front end engineering, all the subsurface work that we have to do, and also allow us to pay for that early warning system we want to put in on the line. But it's a long way from what we're going to need if we have to replace that line. And we have two options on replacing it, and we don't know which option we're gonna select till we get all the subsurface work done. But anyway, my guess is we're talking about 325,000. So we might be able to defray maybe 50,000 of that hasn't already been allocated. But we're gonna still be short for that line.
Mhm.
So we got a couple options. One is, and we already talked to Senator Smith, that we're gonna come back hat in hand in 2015 when the state and Allegheny County reappropriates, hopefully, some money for grants and loans. We'll be at that doorstep, but I'm not sure it's always gonna work. So what I'm saying is, we're gonna have to come up with, say, 250,000, something like that. We have two ways to do it: either raise rates, or we get a loan from our father here that has all the money, the township.
Is there any question of getting money from FEMA, Federal Emergency Management?
I can't answer that question. Nobody's approached him. That's a fairly complex
I'm
deal.
not a similar situation, but several years ago, we had to do some major work on Rhodes Avenue to rebuild a wall. There was it a landslide, Gwen? Do you remember?
It was Hurricane Ivan washed out a part of the road.
That was special money.
Yeah, that was,
That's special money that they allocated.
yeah.
I don't know of anything with FEMA. I can ask, he's given us a list, a pretty comprehensive list of potential loans, grants that are available.
Okay.
But it's not on that list.
Uh-huh.
I
Might be worth looking at.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I could ask that, but anyway, be that as it may, I'm just alerting you that with that kind of an expenditure, which nobody saw, and it looks like we're not going to be able to get anything from the guy that
The landowner.
landowner, which is another issue. But anyway,
Chris, do you know anything about that?
About,
Getting any money from the landowner? He caused it. We're faced with a $350,000 bill.
You'd have to go through litigation and there'd be recovery issues. Then there'd be defenses associated with, I mean, he's already said it in open court, so I can say here that it wasn't caused entirely by him because we put our line into a slide prone area. So, I mean, could you get recovery if we pursued the case? I believe it's been settled though,
yeah, I think that's the problem.
but.
it's been settled. How could it be settled? We haven't authorized a settlement.
The authority?
Is it?
The authority apparently did.
The authority said, well, I was there, we would forego our costs if you would give us right-of-ways. We'd have to pay for those right-of-ways anyway. Where the new line is gonna be, this owner owns that whole hillside up there. We would need a right-of-way from him, which would cost us money. So it was our solicitor's suggestion that we make an offer to get the right-of-ways if we forego our out-of-pocket costs. And that was,
And that's a done deal?
yeah, unfortunately, I was not, I was out of town. To be that as it may, it is a done deal.
With prejudice?
Harlan finalized that, so I'd have to check. I believe that if it was a settlement, it would be.
Yeah, you can't, I mean, once it's settled, you can't come back and reopen it. I'm sure there was a release signed.
It just seems odd.
Yeah.
I agree.
I
That's,
didn't,
I know. Tony unfortunately was out of town.
see, my position has always been, we didn't cause it, we shouldn't be paying for it. He caused it. Now, this
It's been,
specious argument that there's a red clay there, and we should put it there. There's red clay everywhere. But anyway,
yeah, but
that's a specious.
how long has that line been there?
Since 1976, I believe.
That's a
So the red clay didn't cause it, guys. It's been in there since 76.
Yeah.
What caused it was superimposing the
Yeah.
load.
Obviously, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, in our experts' opinion.
Matt, could you get an update from Harlan? Would that be appropriate?
Hey, would you ask him to call me tomorrow, please?
But back to the loan, Tony came to a meeting, and in the event that we need to spend that money quickly,
Mhm.
we're one potential source for the loan.
Mhm.
That's it.
Simultaneously, we're talking to Pliget about laddering CDs. It could in essence be a component of that laddering. My question would be, what security would we have behind it? Not that I'm not going to go any further than that, but there would have to be a sound
Yeah,
loan agreement. And then that's a question I think that we were going to ask Harlan and you. Are there legal aspects that we have to consider with a township loaning to an authority?
Yeah, you're able to. We have to comply with the Local Government Unit Debt Act, and we can do it. It just, there's a bunch of hoops that we'd have to go through. It would take some time. So if this is gonna go forward, we'd have to plan it in advance. It's not something you could do in just a week or two. But it is easier to do.
So is this something that you could do all the planning work and then at the very last minute pull the trigger?
Yeah, we can plan for it. We'd have to do some advertising ordinances along that line, but it can certainly be done. We can handle it.
Well, this is sort of a couple step process. We're gonna go hat in hand again, hoping to get a grant from the state. But we wanted to have something in our back pocket in case this just doesn't happen. But if it doesn't happen, we have the upfront money that we can have all the design done, everything else done.
So what's the,
So we go out for bids, and then you have the opportunity to receive bids and evaluate that. And if you don't have money by that time, then we would come to you for a loan. It's a step process.
So I think it might be a good idea to do what you just suggested, Rod, at least investigate the process so that we're a little bit ahead of the ball. Can we do that?
so do you have any specific requests for this week and next week?
Do you have a motion?
Do you have a planned motion?
Do you need action from this board?
Eventually, yes,
Do you need action now?
not to investigate it. But depending on what you uncover, then we would come to you with a motion.
And just again, kind of tying things together as we're trying to do in the budget. We do have a substantial amount of unrestricted funds. That was the reason we went out looking for the laddered CDs, et cetera. But at the same time, in my opinion, roads should be planned for 7-10 years out. So part of the process is, how do we apply those unrestricted funds over time against an engineer's projection on the roads? Then we also have the potential of DEP fines hanging over our head. So what we're trying to do before we activate the Pliget laddering is figure out just how much money we have.
Good luck.
So there are 3 or 4 components to this, several of which we can control, several of which we can't. And that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I'm just raising the issue because we've got the time is of the essence.
Okay, well, along the line of this total subject, Tony brought up the point that we have received a letter from a local state and federal officials backing our interest in a loan. It's very helpful. This is a letter signed by Matt Smith, our state senator, Mark Mustio, our state representative, and Dan Deasy, who's a state representative. And I'm not familiar with the 27th district, but that's apparently adjacent to
It's Glenfield.
Glenfield. It's our border right next door. But this is a letter, I won't read the whole thing, but it's an encouraging Mr. Dennis Devon, Director of Allegheny County Economic Development, to grant us this loans. And everything that happened was successful. We have the permission to attain this. So I don't know if we should, is there any way we should perhaps respond and thank these gentlemen for
Well, I did personally, but I think it would be nice.
I think the authority responded. Didn't the authority write a thank you letter? I think John came in maybe and had Nicole write a thank you letter to those from the authority. I think
Can
it
you
was-
check that?
Sure.
Because we should respond.
I didn't know that. You should respond.
great, you know. And our county representative was also interested in helping us in any way he could. That's Tom Baker. I talked to him about it. Okay. Discussion of possible merger of township and authority. This is a subject that's been kicked around since I've lived in the township. What's the current thinking?
The current thinking is what happened when it was kicked around? Was it decided that it was a very bad idea, a future idea?
There's
And
almost-
I'll tell you the reason it's on. We own the sewer, they operate it.
Mhm.
That changed the whole picture. Number two, the authority has asked us to consider Gwen's participation in the management of the authority on a very part-time basis. And number three, now we have the authority coming to the township thinking about a loan.
Mhm.
So in the process of all three of those, I have no knowledge whatsoever of the past discussions. And so it's more just an inquiry as to how did those discussions go? Where did they go? What are the legal aspects? So I don't have any,
I know it was talked about, it always seemed to come back to keeping them as separate. And I can't tell you
why?
why.
There was, I recall in here that there was an authority had the advantage so far as borrowing money.
That
And I don't know how
That
that,
didn't happen.
That didn't
It has
happen.
the advantage.
We ended up borrowing the
Yeah.
money.
Clearly, the authority does have that ability, but you have to have
Do you
some net
remember
worth to do it.
when?
Oh, I know it's been talked about, and it's never made it to even this level of discussion. I think it was just something that they talked about, well, what if? So, one thing I recall from the conversation is the owning lines outside your municipal boundaries. It's much easier for an authority to do that than a township. Invites more regulation if the municipality owns the lines and serves customers outside its own boundaries. And that was often where the conversation stopped because everyone realized it got a little messy at that point, and then they just pulled back. So
That is true.
Chris, are you aware of,
Yeah, I'm surfacely aware of it. So we'd have to look into some of the details. The biggest thing that Harlan and I discussed today would be assuming any debt that the authority might have. So the township would have to be willing to do that, and that would require approval from whoever gave the debt. So that would be one issue to consider as well.
One of the big issues was in the audit. Conceive of this, or picture this. Here's an authority that has, in the sewer, maybe has net worth of 600,000 or something. But they're responsible for $16 million of debt. And Tom Sinclair, who I take my guide on when it comes to finances, said the only way this even makes any sense is if we had a capital lease, which would require, so that the authority would have a capital lease, which would allow us to put that, the authority to put that on their books, and also to have it on your books. And then it could be handled as a capital lease. Right now, it's just handled as a note or an item, a footnote. If you read our audit, it's a footnote in our audit. It doesn't have any real substance with respect to the audit. And the auditors and Tom have been going back and forth on this for months, trying to get that resolved. And the way we handled it at the last minute was just a footnote. So we have an obligation, the authority, I'm speaking with my other hat on, or my old hat, has an obligation to service that
Tammy?
date.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you speak to any of this?
Gwen was right. It was mainly about the lines and the sores and their debt that they have. That's the reason why none of us wanted to even.
Because Tammy was on the board as a commissioner.
If you have a history, do you see any good reason to investigate this?
I do now.
Yeah.
Because
Things
of
have
this- all the
changed,
sores
yeah.
Going in now. I mean, I think it would be something really to look into. Before, I think they had a
It's
lot of-
changed, I think.
Yes.
You're right.
A lot of things have changed, over.
And also from just an incredibly practical standpoint, we have a difficult time finding people to serve on one or the other. I hate to imagine sitting here taking on the responsibilities of the authority. That I'm not really looking forward to that. But on the other hand, I think responsibility for the authority could be allocated to certain commissioners. But to find 10 people to be on both boards is increasingly difficult. So practically, there's something. And then functionally, we just keep running into all these
Who did what?
well, no, we're running into some intersections. They collect the debt, we pay the debt. Are they responsible for the debt? Are we responsible for the debt? We own the asset. We have to make sure they're financially sound. It's just, I think it's time to at least look at it. I have no prejudgment. And I think,
Well, what steps would need to be taken to?
well, I think the first step is to determine how complicated legally it is. I mean, one, can we do it? I don't even know that. And then two, I think we'd have to think through not only the legal aspects, but definitely the functional aspects.
The operational.
Yeah, and to some extent, you don't need two backhoes, you have one. You don't need, I think there are some efficiencies. And then I'll stop, but the subject that has come up over the longest period of time is it appropriate for Gwen as a township employee to assist every once in a while in the management of the authority? It seems like everyone agrees that's the case. So there's another intersection.
Good points. Good point.
Do you maintain your own equipment in the authority?
Yes,
By all means.
And where do you keep that equipment?
in the authority's garage.
Okay.
Which needs
So
to be
it's
rebuilt.
duplicate equipment.
Not always.
Not
No, it's
not
not- it's
really.
not
So
duplicate.
they're probably both using
But
their own.
there are things that are specific to the sewers, like safety equipment and that stuff. But,
And we have 4 very good employees,
Yeah.
2 at the authority, 2, sometimes 2.5 at the township, who seem to work together anyways.
Right.
Seem to get along well, seem to have complementary talent. So again, so in answer, I think the first step is what's the legal complication?
Well,
So we can talk about it next week.
But I wonder if we couldn't get some input from other townships that have authorities or boards, or I don't know how you approach that, but
Yeah, I kind of Google searched, I couldn't find any cases.
most of the major have authorities because of the bonding capability, and the authority goes on money and you go out and get bonded.
Yeah.
They can finance it.
Pardon me?
Most of them are separate because of their own.
Yeah,
They most of them are.
yeah, but most of the authorities
borrow the money.
Borrow the money.
borrow the money,
That's
right?
That's what's different here. That's
Yeah, right.
what's complicated. The authority borrows the money. Then they have debt service requirements.
Right.
This thing has no debt service requirements.
Well,
I don't know who bought the bonds, but anyway, there are some obligations.
when Harlan calls you tomorrow and Chris will remind him, we just need a quick overview. Is this a nightmare? Is this not possible from a legal standpoint?
I don't know that we do need a quick overview. I think what we need, I think if we get a quick overview,
Oh, okay.
we're gonna be sitting in the same place.
Okay.
I think we need a memo. I mean, I think we need a memo. I think we
Good.
need a legal memo that
Good.
tells us the ins and outs and what have you. And
Good.
I think we need to recognize that that's not gonna be a free legal memo because Chris is gonna have to do work on it. But I don't think that
Good. I agree.
spitball is what we need here. I think we need a more.
When we were in here before,
A lot
looked
of details.
I looked directly at Bill Davis and I said, is there any reason why this discussion shouldn't go further? And he said, no. You're saying the same thing and you seem to have some history. So what I was initially looking for was there a drop dead?
Well, let me make a suggestion because I do think that our first step should be engaging our solicitor to write us a memo. So why don't we think about, why don't we plan on having on our agenda for next week a vote by the board to engage or authorize our solicitors to do that?
I agree.
Third.
And just to clarify, you don't want us to do anything till next week?
I think what I want you to do is give us an idea, be ready next week to tell us how much, what we'd be looking at. Give us an estimate.
I think if you take a census or consensus of any municipality where you have an authority, there's no doubt that they do keep the two separate and it worked best that way.
Yeah, but again, I think I suspect that if you took that consensus, you would find out that the authority was the borrowing.
Absolutely.
That's right, borrowing and to own the
asset.
utility.
Yeah.
Every authority that I've ever worked with, they own it and they manage it. It's on our books.
Right.
And then they can go out and that's their equity that you.
That's the whole point of the authority. I mean, that's, if you look at the first class township codes, that's what it's there.
Well, and therefore, to some extent, we became an authority.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
I'll-
did
I'll
the
put a-
authority's
I'll
job.
put
Yeah,
a strong second to what Tony just said. I have never heard of an authority that didn't have the debt service plus all the.
Yeah, and that's neither here nor there now. It's just, we own it. We became an authority.
All right,
So let's
let's
just.
move along.
Let's
Okay.
Take a look.
Good discussion. Martha is decided. She
No,
wants to.
retiring. We're not letting her go.
Are you retired?
I guess I am.
Fine.
I told her she has a lot of nerve.
Well,
And I hear by the end of the
She get a
month.
choice?
Does she get a choice?
It is her choice.
Do we have a choice?
Do we get a choice?
Martha, could you, since some people apparently didn't know, could you give a simple reason why?
Yeah.
I think that's a good reason.
That's all right.
I really do. Plus, I'm having problems walking and different other things. Go on.
You know, that's.
Joanne, I asked Martha right off the bat, is there anything we can do to assist?
Yeah.
This is her decision. So,
Well, it's time, right? I'm for old. I can relate.
Don't tell me you're
yeah,
old.
yeah. Hey, be careful.
Everybody.
so Martha, what's your time frame?
I told them I wanted to be out by the end of October, but. if-
The end of October?
Yeah.
If things come up.
She's, yeah.
It's not even
she's
2 weeks' notice.
No,
She gave me
I
notice.
told her-
Yeah.
Yeah, we, Matt, we already have 3
I
residents.
got it. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, could you
Okay.
tell us about that?
There was an ad placed in both the Herald and in the Tribune Review, and in the Tribune Review puts it online as well as in the paper, and in the Herald package also hit a couple of the other local little papers around here. And I've received 3 letters of interest so far. So I'm waiting to see what, my deadline was today, but I'm willing to accept them into the week. I just didn't want it to go on until December, because I would like to take advantage of her abilities and her training. So she's, she's willing to, take some phone calls and help out with the new person, which I greatly appreciate. So
When
I will
are
let you know.
when are the interviews?
I don't have an interview scheduled yet. I only got the first 3 in, so I haven't set anything up yet. I want to see what else comes in first.
You're not allowed to have my job.
Fine. Well, you're not allowed to leave, so that's fair enough.
Well, what's the process look like? Because I'd like to be involved in this to the extent that I can. What does you're going to make selections and do interviews, and do we approve that, or is that under your authority?
It's
the
under
manager?
mine,
Yeah.
but I'm willing to share. So it is under, according to the manager ordinance, it is under my approval, but I would certainly bring the person to you or people.
Well, Glenn, one way that Matt might be able to help right away is the thing we discussed, a code of conduct and confidentiality. This is something you and Gwen can talk about. She mentioned it to me.
Okay.
I mentioned it to my wife.
Yeah.
It's a good idea.
Okay.
She'll tell you why.
Okay.
Do we have a job description?
We do. I mean, we do. I mean, I put something basic in the paper because, when I called the Post-Gazette to run the ad, they said it'll be $1,000, and I said, no, thank you. So I do have that, and then I do have a larger list of responsibilities and a larger job description, so.
Okay,
You
anything
two will
else?
talk about that.
Sure.
Matt,
What's that?
code of conduct and confidentiality.
Sure. Yeah.
For all authority members plus.
For everybody.
We need it for the 32.
Okay, we want to hear about the big party that you had.
Okay. So when I saw this was on the agenda, I put together some notes. So at the risk of never letting Gwen put me on the agenda again, from September 25th until September 28th, I was at Seven Springs to attend the fall conference of the townships and boroughs. So before I say anything else, I really do want to thank Aleppo residents for sending me here. It was an educational trip, and it really was something that was worthwhile. I'm not going to get into everything that was covered because there was a lot that it was a 4-day program, and there was a lot that was not relevant to Aleppo, and I'll explain some of why, but I'm only going to touch on what I thought was relevant. We started off Thursday night with a report from the former Pittsburgh chief of police, who is now the second in command at the statewide emergency management system. And he talked about different types of emergencies that municipalities could be expected to confront. The real take-home lesson that I took from that particular speech was the importance of our emergency management coordinator and our emergency management plan. And I was silently so relieved that we have Judy Haluka on board, because I heard other commissioners talking about how disastrous their emergency management coordinator is and how they just don't care and it's just drudgery. And I was very happy to know that we have somebody who does care and takes good care of us. However, I note that we do not yet have a written emergency management plan. And I know that Judy is working hard on that. But I think that we as commissioners and Judy should recommit ourselves to getting that done and getting that done as soon as we can, because it's important. One specific note that the chief of police suggested that we all consider is the warehousing of drinking water. And he pointed out that while county, state, and federal officials typically have drinking water for emergencies, it can sometimes take time for it to get here. And he said sometimes, not infrequently, it takes 2 days for it to get here. And if you have a catastrophic event that results in a failure of your drinking water, we are the ones that are going to be the first line of defense in getting people drinking water. So given the demographics of Aleppo and our pending line, it seems to me that it's something that we should investigate. Perhaps the management of Masonic Village working with perhaps the management of Swickley Heights Manor Homeowners Association and coming up with some places where we could have some drinking water stored.
Point of order.
Yeah, please.
We have an interconnection with Swickley. So in essence, we have 2 drinking waters.
I appreciate that,
Okay.
but
But that may go down as well.
they could both go down. And wait till
This is an
stay tuned, Tony. Stay tuned, because
emergency.
we got another issue with drinking water that I'm going to discuss in a minute. Okay. And we don't have to decide to do it, but it's. I mean, they were.
And I don't know what you mean by storage of water. We'll go-
He means storing bottled water. 1 gallon per day,
Emergency, when all the water lines are down.
or your water supply is compromised.
You're gonna have to store a lot of bottles of water.
You would have to store a significant amount of water. But he's talking about 2 days worth of water, a gallon of water per person per day.
Well, that's, what are we using water today?
3,800.
Okay.
All right, well-
I'll get the numbers. I don't have numbers.
1,900 residents.
Times 2, 3,800.
Okay.
That seems immaterial.
The next day, we had a presentation from the Allegheny County District Attorney. He talked about police investigative techniques, and it really isn't relevant to us because we don't have a police department, which is fortunate, right? We had a report from a trial attorney who recently tried a case concerning a municipality, follow me here, a municipality mismanaging their stormwater runoff. So they got sued, the case tried to a jury, and the municipality lost and got banged to the tune of $1.6 million or something. Now, the facts of that case were pretty specific, and I don't need to get all into them, but there were 2 points for Aleppo to keep in mind that I thought were very fascinating. First, just to keep in mind, if we modify existing roads, and we're not talking about adding new impervious surfaces, but if we modify existing roads, we're obligated to manage our stormwater. That's basically what happened in this case, that they were not putting in a new road, they modified an existing road, they didn't manage the stormwater, and things went haywire. I think it's something that we should be expecting our engineers to be taking care of, but I think we all learned the mistake of trusting our engineers without knowing exactly what we're expecting them to do. The second point of the case, though, that I thought was even more fascinating was that one of the things that the lawyer said that the jury hated was the notion that the municipality and a co-defendant school district were represented by the same engineer. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
The jury
I hate that myself.
hated it. The jury said that having the same engineer serve 2 entities who should have had independent advice made them think that that corners were cut. And I sat there and I listened to it, and I could just see all sorts of implications. There was a conversation about social media, and I found it personally very interesting, but she was focusing more on labor relationships with municipal social media than she was actually communications. So I won't go all into that. She, however, though, had a presentation on the Sunshine Act in the terms of electronic communications, and she reiterated, I want the board to hear it again, because I've said it, but she was saying it again, that we cannot discuss municipal issues via email with 3 or more of us on the email. She's now getting into other things, text message and Facebook, and are we violating Sunshine Act if we have Facebook? And that's really not relevant. She was talking, and there were commissioners who were standing up and were yelling. This is the only time that people were really upset with these implications of Sunshine Law acts, that they think that it's so onerous that they're not allowed to do anything via email. And her answer was, you can dislike it all you want, but you can't do it. So again, hear me saying, and in fact, she even had case law that said that you can't even discuss what's going to be on the agenda via email. That's a violation of the Sunshine Act. So just hear me saying that I'm not going to be a part of us discussing things via
Are you
email.
saying nothing?
Nothing.
No conversation, no communication with 3.
That has to do with municipal
town.
issues.
Well, what about one-on-one? Say you and I have a
No,
conversation.
that's not
That's
a
not,
quorum. It needs to be a quorum.
oh, it needs to be a quorum. Okay,
Yeah.
so we do have,
And obviously, this is what all the commissioners there that are upset about this were saying, is that doesn't make any sense. So that means that George can send an email to me, George can send an email to you, George can send an email to Tony, but we can't all have that same email together. And does that make any sense? No, but that's the law.
Well, here's a naive question. Is the 3 because 5 commissioners?
Yes, it's quorum.
But if there are 7 commissioners, or that's,
It's your quorum.
so it changes. It's
Yeah.
not 3.
It's your
a
quorum.
It's-
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. They talked about underfunded municipal pensions. That's not an issue for us, right?
Not right.
God bless us. Allegheny County Executive Rich Fitzgerald came in and spoke to the group, and his presentation was really more of an update about the condition of the county. But there was one point worth repeating. He was talking about Alcosan, and he was talking to commissioners who are in municipalities that are getting ready to deal with consent decree. And I know that none of us are happy about our sewer, and we complain about it. But to borrow a biblical metaphor, there was great wailing and gnashing of teeth when they heard about, when people who have to deal with this. So we're not happy with it, but
They're looking at big increases. of-
big increases. I mean,
$3 billion debt.
It's-
Stormwater, it's all combined. sewer.
getting the stormwater out of the sewer. Yeah. Friday afternoon,
We
we
can't go
can't what?
crow about what we did.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we might not be happy with it. We might not be happy with how it came to be.
Matt, we never had a stormwater problem here at our sewer. We never had combination sewers here.
All I'm saying is that as part of the consent decree, the sanitary sewer was coming. It's coming everywhere.
It wouldn't affect us because we
No.
never had
Yeah,
combination.
the big problem, is right, the big problem is all of Pittsburgh and all these older communities have combined sewers. In other words, in the old days, the stormwater, the sewage, everything went in same sewers. Chicago.
I understand all that. I understand.
That's the big money. Now, if you build a sewer like you did here and in recent years, say about the 80s or 90s, all the sewers have been separated. So yours, our sanitary sewer is not combined. So we don't face that kind of problem. None of these communities around here face that problem. Maybe Sewickley does, they have some combined sewers. But if you have a problem when you have combined sewers, because now you gotta pull all that stormwater out of those combined sewers and put it in a whole new system of some form. That's billions of dollars. Pittsburgh, Chicago, billions of dollars. And it's a real.
Even in a minor, do we have any, I've heard the term infiltration into a system. Do we have that problem at all?
Don't ask a question like that because you can't have no infiltration.
Yeah.
You do always have infiltration.
Some, but it's just, yeah.
But-
Insignificant?
Yes. Insignificant, because when we got into this hassle with Sewickley, the first thing we wanted to discover was whether we had excess infiltration. Because we would be paying for it. So we had our engineer relook at his calculations. We had our superintendent evaluate all of our sewers. And more importantly, we now have accurate meters, which we never had before. And we are plotting exactly what our infiltration is. But you can't say you'll have none. Even in the best of systems, you're gonna have 5 to 10% infiltration. You can't prevent it.
So,
But you don't
You
want,
have meters,
you don't
so-
want 35%, which we have.
Okay.
So you
There's
have.
another problem too, if I might, is the fact that Sewickley has had and still has, and we're contributing good raw sewage down to their plant to make their problem worse. Because they have, and they're doing some stormwater separation right now, but they still have that problem. Are we contributing to their problem?
No, we don't have stormwater.
No, we don't, but they do, but we're contributing to their
You can't take care of that.
We're paying for it too.
We're not paying for
Well, we're paying for them to treat this.
that. We're going to treat our sewage, that's all. We don't have stormwater.
No, okay. Yeah. Sir,
More on pensions, and again, I was thrilled that we don't have to deal with that. There was a presentation on land banking, which is the practice of aggregating parcels of land for future sale or development. I don't think for Aleppo because we don't have any blighted property, but the proposition is that as they roll out these land banks, they're going to roll them out at the COG level. And I think that there probably are some of our sister communities in the COG that have some property that might lend itself to a land bank. So it's something, it's a vocabulary term just to sort of wrap ourselves around in case it comes down the line through the cog. We've talked here about having somebody from the State Ethics Committee come in and talk to the board. So I thought it was fascinating that we had somebody from the State Ethics Committee talk to us there. His focus of his presentation was getting us to recognize and avoid conflicts of interest. His basic definition of a conflict of interest is that you're not allowed to use your public office for the financial benefit of yourself or anybody in your family. And I think the classic example is voting to award a municipal contract to yourself or your own company. But he took it out a little bit and used, as lawyers love to do, playing in the gray areas and showing you how deep that gray runs. And the example that he used was say a board member has a wife who's in the American Cancer Society, and the American Cancer Society wants to use a municipal park for a Relay for Life or something like that. And that park has a $10,000 rental fee, and the community wants to waive that fee. If that commissioner participates in that discussion or vote,
Doesn't accuse them.
that's a conflict of interest. So again, it's worth hearing that term and making sure that it's something that you can't behave that way. And what he said is the way you get out of that is you just recuse yourself from that vote. The other thing that he said that was fascinating was the issue with conflicts of interest typically comes up 2 or 3 years down the road. So not only do you want to recuse yourself from the vote, but you want to make sure that that's reflected in the minutes and make sure that when the minutes get approved, that recusal is no, you're going to get out of jail free card. Another ethics issue that came up that you two probably already know about, but for the benefit of us newbies on the board, we are required to fill out an annual statement of our financial interest, which is the same thing that we had to fill out when we ran and when you two won. Apparently, there's a new version of that form that's online, so you can e-file it, but you still have to file it with Gwen. So even if you fill it out online, you can file it with Gwen. And so that
You remind us?
When they come in, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
you do.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
it gets filled out at tax
Yeah.
time.
Good.
And it's okay. Marcellus Shale is not really relevant to us. So I thought the highlight of the weekend was a presentation from the Department of Homeland Security. Of course, I think that he's going to be talking to us about terrorism or whatever, and he comes in and he says, I'm going to talk to you about the condition of your locks and dams in Allegheny County. And he makes this point. He says this, look, you look at downtown Pittsburgh or you look at any of the rivers, you are not looking at the river. You are looking at a pool of water that is created by a dam. And in fact, what was fascinating, where so much of this weekend was pensions and police fund that we doesn't address Aleppo. His presentation on the locks and dams used the Emsworth Lock and Dam as its example for everything, because the Emsworth Lock and Dam creates everything that is iconic about Pittsburgh. That's the point, is created by the Emsworth Lock and Dam. And he says, if these rivers return to their natural state, we think of these rivers as deep, broad rivers. If the dams failed and they returned to their natural state, you would be able to walk across these rivers. They would go from 9 or 10 feet to basically in the fall, you'd be able to walk across them.
The old days, they couldn't get.
What's that?
Well, the point of reference is, put this in perspective. If you look at what the 36 flood was, which was 100-year flood,
Right.
flooded everything. With new locks and dam, that lowers that flood level 11 feet. So, in other words, the pool you're seeing can be lowered, is lowered 11 feet by the impoundment of all these locks and dams. So if you get rid of the locks and dams, you'll have that 11-foot flooding.
Well, so
I mean, that's just one point.
his concern is, all right, so we've got these pools of water that are created by these dams. So what, right? Well, he says Emsworth is a great example. Emsworth reached its useful life expectancy in when? Anybody have a guess?
20 years ago.
62.
1971. All right, so Emsworth is way past its useful life. And I can tell you from personal experience, I've had a case where we had to go look at one of these dams on the Allegheny River. When they say that these things are dilapidated, they ain't whistling Dixie. I mean, there are hunks of concrete falling out of these things. The metal is totally rusted and dilapidated. They're in terrible shape.
Who owns
So
them?
the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So the concern is not if Emsworth fails, what will happen to all that water. That's not the concern. Although, if I was living in Osborne or Swickley, I would be pretty concerned about what's going to happen to all this water. Their real concern is we get our water. Westview Water Authority draws its water from the pool of water that is created by the Emsworth Dam. And if that dam fails, you have no place to get water. You don't. And he said some of them have connecting lines between the different pools, but they're not big enough. There's not enough pipe to get water that all of the water authorities would need to serve all of their customers. Now, I don't know about Swickley. I mean, you talk about we have essentially two lines because we have Westview and we have Swickley. Do you know where Swickley pulls its water? From the Ohio River,
No.
same story.
And
So
there's-
Some people,
there's
didn't Boone draw it from deep wells under the river?
Yeah, that's part of the end of the river. Everybody draws it from not deep wells, but they drill in aquifers that are sand and so forth. So the water goes through these aquifers and that's where you draw it.
But
But the pools make the water.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, Swickley gets it from,
the next pull down. Okay.
we get it from up at Neville Island.
Now, he also talks about, obviously if any one of the locks along the river, they're a system. So if any one of the locks along the river fails, you're going to have a stretch of unnavigable waterway. And
Economic.
it's going to be, he says it would be when a lock fails, if you make the decision, a dam fails, if you make a decision to fix it, you'd be years before you could fix it. So you'd be without barge traffic for years. And that's coal. The other problem, he says, is that the water walls are holding up the banks. And what's built right along the banks are the train tracks. So when the water walls fall, the banks will slide, the train tracks will fail. So now you've lost barges to move the coal. Now you've lost trains to move the coal. He's saying, this is again, Homeland Security saying, this is your biggest Homeland Security risk in this region. Well,
Phenomenal catastrophes.
he says you need one to fail.
Phil, I was just thinking of Westview. They actually get their water from underground aquifers that's supported by the river. City of Pittsburgh does the same.
Tony, he did not
But
indicate that was the
this
case
is
at all.
all about infrastructure. This is, if the locks and dams are infrastructure and they're failing,
Clearly.
then why aren't we fixing
You
it?
know, one of the problems is we're down the Ohio River that they planned to replace, and it was all funded. But they poured about 3 to 4 times as much money into that project as they originally scheduled. So everything else has been put on hold.
Well, what he said is that he said Glenfield and the one down by Swickley,
No,
I forget the name of it.
Emsworth.
Yeah,
Well,
Dashiell's.
Yes.
Dashiell's.
We get ours from.
U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has come up with a 20-year plan. I mean, they have laid out their funding for the next 20 years, and neither Emsworth nor Dashiell's is on that. So there will be no work done to either of our two dams in the next 20 years unless something changes. So and again, his suggestion was kind of, it's going to change when one of these dams fails. And again, what he was saying is it's not necessarily going to be your Emsworth or your Dashiell's, but it's going to be one of the dams along all of the 3 rivers.
There's tons of dams.
And there's tons of them, and it's going to cause everything. So, what's the point to all this? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, other than 20 minutes after he gave his speech, surprisingly, why did I forget his name again?
Congressman?
Representative
Rothfuss?
Rothfuss came in, and he was questioned rather significantly about why haven't we funded these things, and he gave a
I would think there's a connection.
right. Rothfuss, Jay Costa came in and talked to us. He mentioned, and Harlan and I both perked up our ears, Act 13 grants for sewers and water lines. Have we looked into these? Do we know anything about these?
Act 13.
I don't, all I know is I wrote down Act 13 grants.
Is it State?
Yep.
Yeah.
Could you
Act
look that
13.
up, please?
What was the Marcellus Shale Act? The state
No,
act,
that wasn't
That's-
Act 13.
31,
No, that might have been it.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh,
have to do with that as
Oh, was it
well.
I'm
big
trying to think,
number.
yeah,
don't
we get
think
like
so.
$50 a year for something like that. Yeah.
what was a big number?
Well, again, we left and Harlan and I both said Act 13 is something for us to look into. So that's what it is.
And that's a state or federal?
State. Now, I want to finish by encouraging
Yeah.
more, what's
Act
that?
13 is the oil and gas act.
Maybe I got it wrong then. I'd be surprised.
Marcellus Shale.
Yeah, it's basically, yeah, that's what it's like, basically.
Okay, you're
Marcellus
right.
Shale.
I want to encourage more of us to go next year. And it's not necessarily because there's two things it's not. First of all, we're going to talk about it with COG stuff. I'm not a huge believer in this notion of networking. I don't know that talking to commissioners from the other side of Pittsburgh does a whole heck of a lot for us. But it's 4 days that are designated for your brain to be wired for municipal government. And it would sure be helpful to me to have had somebody there other than my wife as I come out of these sessions and I've got all these ideas and I want to talk about this stuff. It would be helpful to have somebody else to talk about that could be something useful.
Did you meet with any?
We did. I sure did. I mean, and I have to thank Harlan. He was a very nice host, and he
He
made
knows
sure
it.
that I went to all the cocktail parties, and Chris and I, chatted with each other, and I had dinner with some folks. But again, what would be now, of course, we can't violate the Sunshine Act by having all of us go there and have a meeting. But maybe one more would be helpful. And I thought the speakers were good. I thought the speakers were very good. But that's not even the point either. The point to me just would be getting some of us together and having the opportunity to just, again, spend this time that's pre-designated to be thinking about this stuff and taking notes. And
Well, and you got some valuable information.
Yeah.
No guarantees, but because Harley's one of the organizers, if you had any topics that you wanted us to try to get a speaker on, I'm sure he'd try to help you out there. So,
I'm sure he would. I'm sure he would be happy to get an idea.
yeah.
So, all right. Thank you for your patience.
Well, Lanny and I went, 2 or 3 years ago, and I thought it was worthwhile. The only problem was,
Was the best part. Going to the old boy network was not very interesting.
Yeah. I mean,
The speakers.
The speakers were fascinating.
I thought the speakers were good.
had to haul Lanny off to the hospital in the middle of one night.
Oh, no. That's not a good place.
It was a half-hour
Yeah,
ambulance ride.
Oh, jeez.
Okay, thank you. That was a great report, and you really wrote, certainly well worthwhile that you got there.
You want to bring up this thing?
Okay, discussion of COG annual dinner.
I think we just justified your attendance.
What's that?
Well, this is COG.
The COG dinner plays a similar role in terms of getting to
Well,
know other managers.
I certainly don't disagree with, the COG dinner is not education. Right? The COG dinner is
So come,
social.
I don't know. I mean, have you been there, Joanna? Well, what would you call it?
It's a social evening.
And the benefit to the township is?
It's a free, well, it's not a free dinner, but it's dinner out. It's, you're a representative
Little
of
pay,
the
huh?
township.
But there must be more to it than that.
No,
It's a chance to talk.
It's a
It's-
networking.
Yeah, it's good to talk with,
Networking.
and there's always somebody from Comcast there, somebody from Waste Management, there's just, you get to, and there's some local people that pop in, Rich Fitzgerald popped in once, and that kind of thing. So it's a chance to talk with your fellow neighboring communities about anything.
No, Matt, I agree with you. The structure is not educational.
It's not designed to
No,
be a
it's
session.
not
but on the-
designed for the
On the same token, the only public official educational event that I attended, one of those ones, newly elected officials, the first thing I did was go up to an old time borough or township manager just down the river and said, what's the worst thing I can do to my township manager? And he said, micromanage. That was very valuable. And that allowed me to then come to Gwen and say, I don't want to micromanage. So grab the bull by the horns whenever you possibly can. There's an educational component even to a casual conversation, I guess is what I'm saying. So if Gwen's sitting there with another township manager or Joanne's sitting there with another commissioner, just silly little questions like that sometimes are very valuable.
I don't have any issue with Gwen going.
Okay.
I mean, no, if Gwen, if you think it's a worthwhile way to spend time and money, then that's fine with me.
I think, because I think I get a lot more out of the COG than, I think the daily meetings, the daytime meetings are very beneficial for the managers and secretaries to attend, because we really do pick each other's brains and bounce ideas off each other, so.
And we
I
do
find
have a
that
line
benefits
item in the
COG.
budget to cover.
We do.
I mean, there is a line item in the budget.
Well, that doesn't mean because the
No,
money
that
is
doesn't mean
budgeted,
we have
doesn't
to
mean we
spend it.
should spend it.
But we don't have to come up with a special fund.
Well, it's what, $30?
It's
not much.
It's $50 for the dinner and a $30 door prize for the community, so.
That's above my pay grade to make a decision.
My take on this is this. Having gone to the COG meetings month after month, I am not convinced that we get anything out of the COG. If Gwen is telling me that she gets something out of the COG, that's something. To me, then that adds one to make two things that we get out of the COG. One is our salt contract, and two is whatever Gwen says she gets from having meetings with.
Well, it's the.
I don't think we should spend one dime more than we need
On the
to
COG.
get those two benefits.
I don't know.
So
Sounds good to me.
What sounds good to you?
Proceed as we have.
Well, that's-
Actually, we have had a commissioner go. And what Matt is saying, why have a commissioner go?
that is
Well,
exactly.
who wanted to go? Well, then Gwen,
I'm going because
I
I
don't
should
go.
support,
You went.
COG. Yeah, I go, yeah,
I have no interest in going.
I went.
You
It's
would,
fine.
well, don't we get the garbage contract through the COG
We do.
also? I mean, those are two pretty hefty contracts. But I agree with you, Matt. But I do think that for Gwen, she'll get some value. I'm not contributing.
Gwen, honestly, as far as I'm concerned, Gwen, if you get benefit out of going to McDonald's, then I want to pay for you to go to McDonald's. Seriously, I don't care. My position on the COG is not that I don't want you to go, because
Right.
if you want to go and you're getting some benefit out of that, then we are getting $30 or $50 worth
Right.
of benefit out of that. I don't want to go. I don't think it's
want
worth money for me to go to see the same people that I'm going to see at the meeting and hear the same stuff that I'm going to hear at the meeting, or not hear at the meeting because they can't get a quorum for their meeting. So
When is it, Gwen?
Wednesday.
And it doesn't require a motion, does it? Can't.
It's this coming Wednesday.
well, that's another thing that is relatively frustrating to me is that
Yeah.
it needed. I mean, it's the check's gone, right?
No.
Oh, I thought the RSVP was due.
RSVP is in, but we have to.
Oh,
cancel,
I
we have to
see.
Cancel.
Well, I don't think you should. If you want to go, I take some issue with the door prize.
I make a motion that we authorize them
We can't.
to pay for it.
We can't.
Oh, we can
We
tonight?
can't do it.
All
Yeah,
right.
you can, no, you can. You
I
can.
second.
Yeah, the dinner's Wednesday, so a motion next week won't do
There
anything.
you go. What's your motion, Tony?
I make a motion that we pay or authorize Gwen to go to the COG meeting and we pay for it.
What about the
Nice.
door prize? Are you including the
And
door
I
prize?
make a motion, we pay for the door prize.
You make,
And
wait,
then-
first
Let's do
Tony
them
makes the
two. Yeah, let's
motion.
do it two at a time. How about one at a time?
Okay, Tony made the motion that I go to the dinner.
And I second it.
Okay,
I make a motion that we pay for the door
wait,
prize.
one motion at a time.
That's just the second motion. Oh,
Well, you have
wanna
to vote on the first
Okay,
motion.
okay, vote.
Boy, we're spending a lot of time. Okay, any other discussion on the first motion? All in favor? of the
Aye.
motion? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, Joanne.
I make a motion that we pay for the door price of $30.
I second it.
Is that a second, Tony? Did
Yes.
you say a
Yeah,
second?
that's
Okay.
within my pay grade.
Any further discussion? All in
That's a
favor?
drawing, wait, but that's a drawing, a prize for,
It's a door prize. They put them on the table and you get a raffle ticket and
All right.
sometimes you leave with something.
Just part of the deal.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Okay. 4 to 1.
Motion pass.
Okay. Trick or treating.
You want me to take this? So,
You have the small kids.
yeah, Gwen tells me it's normally on Halloween, which is Friday this year, which is also the night that everybody else in the valley is doing it. And that's typically sort of rubber stamped in. Just out of curiosity, I floated that idea on Facebook, and I got one person that said that they thought that we should move our Halloween to the daytime, and that perhaps this year it should be Saturday following. And when I said why, she said, well, it'll be warmer and you'll get more families, and maybe you'll get families from down in the village that'll come up to have a second Halloween.
You do that anyway.
So I put that out when I sent around my email today and said, does anybody have any ideas? And I got a ton of people saying they did not like that idea. So
Keep it Friday, keep it on
Keep it where it
Halloween.
is.
It's normally 6 to 8 on,
Everybody else.
I move to have trick or treating on October 31st.
I second.
What time?
6 to 8.
But good to get the community's opinion.
Yeah. I take it our police don't care.
they tend, from what I understand, I think from fire chief, they like to have it more coordinated. They just like to have it, because they try to help out too, so.
Okay.
Coordinated in the community means everybody's looking out for children on the same day. Okay, so you made the motion?
Yep, Matt
Matt
seconded it.
seconded it?
All in favor
Aye.
signify.
Aye.
Motion opposed? No. Motion carried. Okay. Well, I think we covered a lot of territory, so that's a lot to discuss tonight. But unfinished business?
Should we bring it up?
You can absolutely.
Rod, you may remember, I don't think you guys did this, we had discussed an address change for McCoy versus South McCoy.
Yeah, I remember.
And nothing really happened. I talked to Gwen today, and it's very involved to do an address change. It's not simply you go to the post office. And what's happened on McCoy and South McCoy is sometimes very dangerous. The incident is Patty Vecchio there was a 911 call to a South McCoy residence, and they showed up at her house on McCoy. And it was compounded by the fact that the week before, her grandson had called 911 by mistake. So the policeman was very irate and was sure that this little boy made the same mistake again. And then it became all kind of, and meanwhile, the person who called was on South
Oh.
McCoy. No, he wasn't here. Anyway, there's been so many things, pizza deliveries at 2 a.m.
People on
She
the
got a
wrong
new
roof.
washer, new roof,
On the
new
wrong roof,
washer
yeah.
and dryer.
It's-
I've looked-
There were one house called for a roof repairman and they went to the other house and she woke up to someone walking on the roof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Washer and dryer delivered and put in place because person there was a babysitter or something and didn't know, and Sears came and took out the old washer. So I mean, it's very dangerous, you know, if there's
I
a
can see
fire.
that, sure.
So anyhow, the issue is that, pardon me?
Don't forget the cookies.
I get that.
Oh, I know the cookies that came to my house that were for South McCoy that I ate.
So Ernie
That
Tucci,
was the best story, yeah.
Ernie Tucci and his wife
Right,
don't
and
look at the
Tucci.
same. Don't look-
I know, I still get their mail, but, so anyhow, I guess last year there was a group of residents that got to petition and said they wanted to change their numbers. But it's very involved to do this because there's deeds and records that have these addresses. So in order to, I guess, to continue this, they had to agree. Take it from here.
Okay, well, we got the letter last year written by, signed off on by residents on both streets saying we have a problem. I talked to the fire chief and he agrees since it's an issue. I don't know, Chris, if we look, I remember we talked about, I can't remember what we said. It might be easier to change the road name than to change the individual house numbers. It might be easier to say that is no longer going to be called South McCoy. It's going to be called one of those Old Farm Road or something like that. Just change the name rather than 456 or something like that. Individual
Well,
changes.
how are they, is South separately from?
It's numbered the same.
It's
So that the
duplicate
house
number.
Oh.
Yes.
So my house is 147 McCoy
But there's a
Place, and
147
then there's
South.
147 South.
And in the
Okay.
legal records, it's only an S too. So people blow past that sometimes. If South isn't written out in the legal records, it just shows an S.
You did
So they
not
just
have a
do right
data
past it.
engineer involved in this planning.
That was,
Well, the other thing is the name of the road. It's
Yeah.
McCoy Place
Place
Road.
Road.
You don't need place and a road.
Yeah. There's a lot of the whole neighborhood is just poorly designed. It's a nice neighborhood.
You're
Poorly
talking about
numbered. I
me.
love the neighborhood. So, some of the residents have brought it back up saying, we talked about this last year, we want to talk about it again. So when there's a new house built in the township assigns the address. So that's much easier. You just office and you do the 911 system and say, there's a new house being built, here's in the county, and you just let them know the lot and the address that we assign, and there it is. So we would definitely need legal help to figure out what the best way to get out of the situation is. And it'd be changing the name of the road might be the easier way to do it. It's a little more complicated than just notifying the post office, but we can, I'm sure it's happened. When everybody went from RD1 to a house
Right.
number, it happened. So I'm sure there's a way to do it. It's
We're
just,
gonna call it McDonald Road.
something else. Just, yeah.
Get a new name.
But something happened that I guess, people
kind of fell off.
decided that they really didn't want to go.
Might be too
through all of
complicated, but now I
this.
think
It's
we've had-
complicated, but it has,
We've had some more
since it's
incidents.
911 issue,
Let's
Yeah.
move forward.
it's really has to.
Let's move forward.
Yeah.
Confusing.
So would you like us to, would be Chris, to really research what we do to make this change?
Mhm.
Yeah, I did it briefly in preparation for the meeting. I think it's an ordinance. I think the real issues with all the ancillary.
Yeah, we would just need to figure out who all we would need to notify, like,
Right,
we need to find an example of where this was done, so
Right,
that we can
okay.
copy what they did.
So it's in Chris's domain to,
yeah.
Well, Chris and I can work.
Do we notify and the homeowners notify, I would think? Wouldn't the homeowners have to notify?
Oh, they would have to do their own regular
Yeah.
change of address card, but we
Right.
would have to notify official entities, I'm most worried about deeds in the county and property
Taxing
records,
authorities.
taxing and property records. That's more, we want to make sure we get that right. Everybody can file a little yellow
So
change of
the
address
first
card,
step
but
is you, right?
Like I said, I did it briefly. I think it's ordinance, but I'm trying to get a list of all the notifications.
Good.
So we can talk about it.
And you're thinking more in lines of changing
The name.
name of,
Well, what do the residents want?
this letter said, some thoughts, eliminate the word south and eliminate the word place and make the whole road McCoy Road, but then you would have to change the numbers because they connect. Or retain the house numbers and change the name.
So they're giving us the option.
Yes,
I would think that changing the name would be easier.
that feels easier to me as well and less.
Plus, then we get to come up with a new name.
Sounds political.
Do a contest.
We could do a contest.
Contest. Pick a name.
Let all the residents on that road, let them vote.
Switchy Heights Drive,
That would be great. Sewickley Heights, something,
Drive south.
anything, yeah.
Extension.
Sounds
Sewickley
Heights
Heights
Drive extension. There's gonna be
Place. Sewickley
problems.
Heights Place. There's no Sewickley Heights Place.
There's gonna be a problem with, the Ridge at Sewickley Heights Manor and Sewickley Ridge. Same thing, the new development.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I couldn't
Already.
believe that they,
Look at the names are all there.
I can't believe that they did the new
The
new
road
development.
Liberty
No,
and
but
flag and tree and.
Police and
Still, yeah,
fire
right.
here, Sewickley Ridge.
Or again,
Oh, okay.
the
That's-
pizza
that's
guy.
a development,
Right.
and not open that new one.
Yeah.
But they've already been
That's right,
confused
and
once.
that would be confusing.
It was dumb. Okay,
All right. Audience participation.
new business,
No business? Oh, shucks.
President Gardner, new business.
Thought I could.
You're slipping that by.
Go ahead.
I don't have any.
Oh,
I still want you to call it.
all right. Okay. I'm asleep here. Anyway, no new business? I don't hear any. Citizen participation. Identify name and address. Go ahead.
Hi. That's right. Sandy Moore, I'd say right at right, 921 Redgate Road. I have two questions. When you were talking about the landslide,
Yes,
okay, you're not, I guess you don't, we don't know who that person is, but then you were talking about a right of way?
Yeah.
That you would have to,
Kruger, what's his name? Kruger.
oh, okay. You would have to pay for right of ways for the road,
For
For the water line.
for the water line rather, okay. And so if this can get up to upwards of $350,000, the township cost, how much does a right of way cost?
It's a negotiation. You have
I
a
don't
rule
have,
rule of thumb?
no, I don't have a rule of thumb.
It's frankly, it's a negotiation.
Well, I can
Well-
understand that.
Well, it's a negotiation to a point, right? Because if they're not gonna give it to you, you take it.
Well, then you still have
Eminent
Yes.
domain.
Eminent domain, right?
But you have to pay
to
that.
pay for
You
it.
pay the estimated just compensation.
Right.
Yeah, but they can't, it's not extortion.
I think you're right. Maybe that's the answer. It's whatever the
fair market
fair
value.
market value is.
I don't think, I mean, for my gut would say that for a right of way through that land, it's not gonna be very much. Which is one of the reasons,
I know.
You're gonna find out tomorrow.
I'm gonna talk to Harley tomorrow, find out what the status of the settlement is that I'm hearing about for the first time tonight.
I mean, Tony's not happy either.
I am very unhappy
Yeah,
All right,
it's
Sandy,
a lot of
sorry.
cost for the township. Because DEP fines, I know I'm not at every meeting, so you probably already talked about that. Did something was said about maybe a slew of DEP fines?
We don't know.
We don't know
We
anything.
don't know.
We amount, we know there's a very strong potential.
We don't even know we'll be fine.
It's,
There's the
What do you think?
possibility.
Okay, you think you'll be fine because of why?
Well, wait, let me caution us here. Let me
Oh,
caution
you
us.
can't talk about it?
This is not something that's necessarily been addressed publicly. And
that's right.
Okay. So whoops, you
No.
didn't just bring that up yet,
well, no facts of that have ever been discussed publicly.
I don't think so. We shouldn't be discussing
So when's the time frame that I can revisit that question?
it. When it becomes a matter of issue, when they notify us.
Okay, and I don't.
Let's leave it this, let's try to say something that's a little bit more official than we're not gonna talk about. The matter of pending litigation involving the Department of Environmental Protection.
Okay.
That involves an ongoing investigation that we can't speak about under the executive session provision to the Sunshine Act that allows us to not discuss pending litigation.
Right, and that's understandable.
So when are we going to be able to discuss that? I don't think that there's a timeframe for when we'll know the answer to that. It's when the investigation is concluded, and it's not our investigation.
It's DEP.
It's DEP's investigation.
So I can maybe call them up and ask them.
If you hear something from them, let us know,
Let
please.
us know. If you get an answer, let us all
Well,
know.
I don't want to get you in trouble. No, okay, then I'll just wait and hear more about that, whenever you guys are going to speak about it. That's my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you for
participating.
coming. Yes, sir.
Glenn Kidder, Swicky Heights Drive. I've had a couple of the residents over there ask if it would be possible for Public Works to paint the center line of the intersection of Swicky Heights Drive and Dunn Mitchell. It might help people turning in, especially at night, to see where that center line of that road is. I don't know what. If they could paint it back maybe 75 or 100 feet back from Glen Mitchell. I noticed people coming in there that swing very wide because of that poor radius that they have on there, so that might help.
Gwen, will you ask
Pardon?
the
Yes.
men about that?
I will ask the minute.
Is that, let's see, keep reading. Is that our road?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So-
Well,
It's not really ours, but we
Well,
did
for
it.
this conversation, yes.
No, it's our road. Yeah. Let's.
No, the only thing Tony's the new head of Public Works, that's why I was getting his input. Yeah, because John was the head of Public Works.
We'll look into it. I don't know if it's a big deal, so I don't know what's involved. I'll talk to Tom, see what's involved. Doesn't seem like it's a big issue.
George could do it with a can of spray paint.
Kenny, you're authorized.
2:00 this morning.
I heard a chainsaw out there. George is out there again.
Having fun.
Okay. Anything else? Now's your opportunity. Okay,
I move to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?